The sun had long slipped behind the rust-colored ridges when the street of Dry Creek turned silent, as if even the wind was holding its breath. The cowboy had walked half the town that day, boots heavy with the dust of failure. His name was Luke Maddox, a man whose past hung around him like a ghost that refused to rest. The world hadn't been kind to him. Once he'd been a ranch hand, trusted by every man west of the Pecos. But one wrong night, one mistaken bullet, and he became the man everyone whispered about, but no one dared to look in the eye. Now he was just another shadow on the edge of the saloon light, with a broken hat brim and a hunger that went deeper than his stomach. He'd learned to live quiet, to move quiet, and most of all to trust no one. But fate doesn't knock when it enters. It storms in with dust and blood. That's what happened the night he saw her. It started with a scream, sharp and small, coming from the far end of the street where a few drunk ranchers were, kicking barrels for fun. Luke didn't mean to look, didn't mean to care, but something in that sound, that helpless crack of fear, made his boots turn without his permission. She was standing there, cornered against the post office wall, her hands shaking, her dark hair tangled with dirt and sweat. Apache blood was clear in her face, proud and terrified all at once. The men taunting her laughed in the kind of way that made your skin crawl. Luke's hand went to the holster out of habit, but he stopped halfway. He had promised himself never to draw again, unless it was for something that mattered. Maybe this did. The street smelled like whiskey and rain, a storm brewing over the horizon, and the lamps flickered as he stepped forward. "That's enough," he said, his voice steady but low. The laughter stopped. The tallest of the drunks turned, grinning. "Ain't your business, cowboy," he spat. Luke's fingers twitched at his side. "It is now." The silence after those words was heavier than gun smoke. One of the men reached for his belt, but Luke was faster. The gun came up like a whisper, a flash, a crack, and suddenly the only sound was the Apache girl's ragged breathing. One man lay in the dirt, clutching his arm, howling in pain. The others backed away, eyes wide, muttering curses before scattering into the night. Luke didn't move for a long second. The rain started to fall, soft and cold, washing the dust and the tension together. Then he turned to her. "You all right?" he asked. She stared at him like a deer caught in light, trembling. Why did you help me?" Her English was broken, but her voice carried something raw, something that reached him where words couldn't. "Didn't seem right," he muttered. She hesitated, then whispered, "They will come back." He nodded once. "Then we'd better not be here." He took his hat off, shook the rain from it, and offered his hand. For a heartbeat, she looked at it as though touching him might burn. But then she took it, her fingers cold and shaking. Her name, he would learn later, was Naya, a name that meant moonlight in her people's tongue. But for now she was just a frightened soul trying to stay alive in a town that didn't care whether she did or not. They slipped into the alleys behind the saloon, where shadows hid their breath and thunder rolled in the distance. Luke's coat was soaked through, and her feet stumbled on the mud, but they didn't stop until the lights of Dry Creek faded behind them. The prairie stretched ahead, black, endless, and whispering. "You got a place to go?" he asked. She shook her head, eyes glistening under the faint flash of lightning. "They took my brother. I looked for him. They said he gone. I not believe." Luke looked away. He'd heard that story too many times. Young Apache boys taken to camps or worse. "Then you'll stay with me tonight," he said finally. "Tomorrow we'll see." He didn't know why he said it. Didn't know what part of him still cared enough to offer shelter. Maybe he saw too much of his own brokenness in her eyes. They found an abandoned barn outside town, walls half rotten, roof missing patches. He started a small fire from the dry wood, stacked by some long-gone farmer. The warmth flickered between them, painting her face in gold and shadow. "You're not afraid of me?" he asked, half smiling. She looked at him quietly. "You're not like others. You say few words, but eyes, they tell truth." Luke chuckled under his breath. "Truth don't do me much good these days." She tilted her head slightly. "Still, it makes you different." The fire cracked. And for the first time in years, Luke felt something close to peace, even if just for that fleeting hour. He sat back against a post, hat low, eyes drifting to the storm outside. But peace never stayed long in his life. A noise came from the dark, distant hooves, faint but certain. Naya's hand gripped the edge of her blanket. "They come," she whispered. Luke was already on his feet, gun in hand. "Keep quiet," he said softly, moving toward the barn door. Through the slits in the wood, he saw torches flickering in the rain. The men from town had returned, and they'd brought more. He turned back to Naya, her eyes wide and afraid. "Stay low. Don't move unless I say." The thunder rolled louder now, mingling with the rhythm of hooves. Luke stepped into the storm, every drop of rain slicing across his face. The men approached slow, confident, thinking they'd cornered a broken cowboy and a helpless girl. They didn't know Luke Maddox yet. He raised his gun, the barrel gleaming under the lightning, and spoke in that same steady, quiet tone. "Turn around. You don't want this fight, but Dry Creek didn't raise men who knew when to quit." The first shot cracked through the rain, and then all hell broke loose. Fire flashed, mud splashed, and the night lit up like a burning field. Luke moved like a ghost, each shot precise, his body a rhythm of memory and instinct. For every man who fell, another shouted, but he didn't stop until silence came again, heavy and final. When the smoke cleared, only Luke remained standing, soaked, trembling but alive. He turned back to the barn where Naya waited, crouched in the dark. Her eyes met his as he stepped inside, dripping water and gun smoke. "It's over," he said, but she shook her head slowly. "No, it just begins." The fire crackled between them again, and Luke realized she was right. Whatever had happened that night wasn't the end of trouble. It was the start of something neither of them could walk away from. The storm outside eased into a gentle drizzle, the sound soft against the old wood. Luke holstered his gun, sat down beside her, and said quietly, "Get some rest. Tomorrow we ride." She watched him for a moment, then whispered something in Apache that he didn't understand, but somehow felt. Her eyes softened, and in that silence, two broken souls found something. They didn't know they'd been looking for trust. The dawn would bring new trouble, but for now, all they had was the warmth of a dying fire and the calm after the storm. Luke leaned back, closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, felt sleep take him without fear.